Hey everyone, this is Kit Cabello of Hard Lens Media. Today I'm joined here with the chair of the Illinois Libertarian Party, Lex Green. Lex, thank you for joining Hard Lens Media. So, initially, getting this conversation started, let's talk about this 2018 midterm election cycle, which will also be connected with our governor race as well. The Libertarians have three candidates who are vying for the race for governor. There's a Libertarian primary happening. What are your thoughts on which of these candidates will essentially hold a standard for the Libertarian Party?
Well, I don't have a favorite. I try to stay neutral even if I did. But we have three good candidates. They all speak well, they all understand libertarian philosophy, and will be good spokespersons for the party and for the movement. So I'm thrilled that this is the first time in quite a while that we've had three people vying for that position, and I welcome that. It's going to be great.
Now, of course, there's going to be some differences between this election cycle and previous ones due to the fact that Bruce Rauner effectively lost in both the House and Senate. There's a growing animosity. Republicans are breaking rank from him, and the Democrats have yet to choose their own candidate as well. Will this be the year where the third parties, essentially, basically the Libertarian Party, have a podium and be on the debate stage with the other two establishment parties?
I'm hoping so. One of the problems is we always look forward to each election saying this is our year for whatever reason. And then in the end, we still have to face the realities of politics. I do know that Bruce Rauner has been building coalitions around the state, building up the Republican Party, and the possibility exists that we'll be running against two billionaires. And if that happens, we certainly are going to be let's say, without the ammunition we need to compete against those two big guns. But I do think that that also sets us apart, that we are of the people, we aren't a couple of billionaires. And I'm hoping that the people of Illinois see that and get to hear our message.
Now, of course, everything that's usually been said about third parties is that they take away the vote, they're a distraction, they don't really cover real issues. Is the Libertarian Party itself, especially here in Illinois, really prepared to deal with the backlash from media that would make that kind of statements about your candidate, which one it will be?
Oh, yeah. Believe me, when I ran in 2010, I was vilified by many in the Republican Party because the number of votes I got was more than the number of votes their candidate lost by. But in no stretch of the imagination were all my votes going to go Republican. So the whole idea of a spoiler is just a myth brought up by the two parties to explain their losses. I think the most important thing to me is that our voice gets heard. We have real solutions to the problems of the state, and yet we're marginalized to where we're talking about and fighting for ballot access more than our solutions for the state and for the nation. So I think this is the year that we're going to break out, and people are going to finally understand that we have real solutions that maybe they've never heard about.
Now, if there's a Libertarian candidate for governor, essentially he will be by himself. I mean, there will be a House and Senate. They'll be consisting of Democrats and Republicans. How will that candidate, whoever it may be, should they win the election seat for governor, how will they be able to implement libertarian policies, and what would a libertarian governor be like, especially for a state like Illinois?
Well, that's very interesting to think about because the two parties have their little game where they vilify each other even though they end up in the end doing the same things over and over again. And what we would add is a principled voice that they would have to answer. And also, one thing that would introduce is something they don't possess right now, and that's the ability to compromise. Once you start introducing third and fourth parties into the mix, now coalitions have to be built, and they have to learn, instead of how to throw out angry rhetoric, they have to learn how to reach across the aisles and make deals.
So when we also look at another aspect for third parties, there's a growing percentage of Americans, 40% to be precise, that are identifying themselves as independent. That could be either Green Party, Libertarian, Socialist Alternative, Workers' Party. But what does that tell you now that more Americans are looking at independence instead of identifying as Democrats or Republicans?
Well, I think it's true that most people have never really identified in our generation, the baby boom generation and the subsequent generations, have not really identified themselves hardcore as Republicans and Democrats as much as our parents did. But now the truth is being made obvious by the actions of the two parties over the last several elections, that they don't represent what people thought they did. And that's one reason why the Libertarians are so important, is that we have a principle that guides us. So once people look at that principle, more of those people who say they're independents will realize that they're actually libertarian. But even if they don't agree with us 100%, they will have a voice that isn't party aligned with the two major parties.
All right. And final question. What do you want to say to people who maybe cast doubt on independence? That's including the Green Party, Socialist Alternative, Libertarians, people who want to basically keep them off from being on the election cycle, or people who don't want to pay them any attention. What do you want to say about the future of independent parties, and what do you want to say to people who are naysayers to independents entering the political stage?
Well, I go back to what I said earlier, is that we have a message that needs to be heard. And you can try to marginalize us, but I mean, let's look at the last 40 years. Who has stood for the legalization of marijuana? Clearly, the Libertarians have. Who has stood for equal rights for gays? Clearly, the Libertarian Party has. Now these ideas are suddenly becoming not only mainstream, but they're becoming codified in the newer laws that are being passed. And I take credit for that as a libertarian. So we are moving the policy in a public direction, moving public policy in a libertarian direction. So the trick now is to get people to recognize that we are one of the driving forces behind these changes, and it's time for people to get on board with us. And that way we can overcome the entrenched special interests that are controlling everything.
All right. Well, Lex Green, thank you so much for joining Hard Lens Media. And to our audience, let's all do what we can to build a better future. Peace.